what do we aspire to be? If you know the brand, what does that mean in terms of what we can give you and what you should be coming to? That is not as high, but moving up. So we're going to push on that. We're going to work with each one of our campuses to make sure that their vision is out with their brand. And it's not one size fits all. So we're going to be doing a lot more marketing for Rutgers Newark and for Rutgers Camden, as well as for the New Brunswick axis. What are our challenges? Obviously, the biggest challenge we face is financial. We've had to take a major financial hit integrating UMD and J. We knew that we were going to face about $50 to $70 million worth of one-time costs right away, and nobody gave us a penny of help for that. We were supposed to be held harmless for undisclosed financial liabilities. I can tell you that as we've gone under the books now, we see close to $60 million worth of accounts receivables, and accounts receivables in businesses, it's like I give you an IOU, but this is you owe me, and we're carrying on our books the you owe me's that are way up there in numbers, which can never be collected. They're so old they should have been written off many years ago. So we're going to have to eat that too. I'm very skeptical that we'll get any help from the state to offset that, even though contractually we should be. And of course, the state, while they continue to fund us at the same level as they did the year before, that's the mantra, and we're grateful for that in an environment where state funding is under increased pressure, not just here, but across the nation. And we're actually doing better than many in terms of that number, especially with the state looking at no revenues coming in increasing. But keep in mind that when the state keeps us constant, they pay for both a piece of our operating budget and for our benefits pool for our employees. The benefits pool are contractually going up 3% per year. And what the governor has done, if you read the legislation, is paid for the increased benefits out of our operations appropriation. So we've actually seen a cut in our appropriation in dollars to run the university by about 2–2.5% per year every year. At the same time that our real expenses are going up by 3% or more every year. So understand that a flat budget from the state doesn't mean that we get the same number of dollars, it is going down. Our job is to continuously try to find alternative sources of revenue that don't require raising tuition. You know, what can we do with tech transfer? What can we do with philanthropy? That's why I'm so committed to making sure our fundraising campaign continues. What can we do with private-public partnerships? What can we do with tech transfer? All things that generate revenue that allow us to keep the university going without putting it on your backs. So let me just make two observations. First, tuition. We've been able to keep tuition increases over the last 3 years at 3% or less, when most of our peer institutions are well up in the 8 to 10%. And we're facing the same challenges they are. And we're able to do that because we are working hard to find those alternative revenue streams, and we're doing our best to do that. And also, we recognize that 60% or so of our students receive significant financial aid, not loans, but aid, that averages about $9,000 per student. So you don't want to be fooled by the sticker price. You want to look at what we're trying to accomplish to get the cost as low as we can. Can't make it happen so it goes to zero. I wish I could, but we're certainly trying our best to do that. If you look at the fundraising, when I came, I think our fundraising was averaging around $90 to $100 million a year. We're going to be over $200 million this year, or very, very close to it. I see that as a trajectory that we have to sustain if we're going to continue to be able to keep the costs down. It's not just a let's make a big push. It's this is the base. We've got to grow from here. And we're not raising money for new buildings. As I said before, we have the funds for the buildings. We're raising money, even though we sell a piece of a building for a name, the money goes into an endowment that will enable us to program the building and provide scholarships for people who are going to be in the building. We have virtually doubled the number of endowed professorships at the university in this campaign that we just finished, from around 30 to just about 60. And my goal is to double that in the next 5 years. And that all helps us because it reduces our budgetary constraints. Because if we have an endowed faculty member, we don't have to pay that salary necessarily out of operations. We've also increased the number of scholarships and fellowships by over 900. All right, so our commitment is to see at least half of that go into endowment for scholarships that is perpetually there that we can give back to you to offset your costs. So a lot of things going on, but a lot of challenges. The biggest ones are always financial. I think that I'm just delighted with the leadership we have here in Newark and in Camden. As you know, we have a new Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs that was just signed up to start in July. That's Barbara Lee. Barbara was the Dean of the School of Management Relations in New Brunswick, and chairman before that. She's a lawyer and a PhD and been around Rutgers for many years. And so a lot of the things that you're going to be interested in seeing moving forward, I'm asking her to take direct responsibility for, and that's all she will be doing. So Andrew, we have something on the way. So there are lots of stuff happening, and I think I'll just stop there and answer any questions.
Thank you for that, President Borthy.
Who wants to start things off here? You can't tell me this is a shy group.
Hello. I guess this is targeted to all three of you guys. My concern is that I understand that there was a recent stabbing in the library, and that because of that, the security guards had to only have one door, or like one entrance and one exit. But my thing is, I think that the school gets enough money that you guys can have enough security guards for both entrance and exits. It's kind of annoying. Like, it's not, my problem is not showing my ID. It's just the fact that I pay all this tuition and yet I only have to use one door. So yeah, that's my.
Okay, so then I think there's two levels to that question, and I'm going to answer one, and I'm going to kick the can down to my colleagues here and answer the second one. The first has to do with campus security writ large. A major issue for all campuses, and particularly for campuses in big urban environments, which is where I've been most of my life. The tendency is to wall ourselves off from the community because that's going to make us safer, and that often is not the case. It often makes us less safe. But on the balance, you also can't be so porous that anybody can be walking into anything at any time, or you wind up with more risk to your students. So I think the incident in the Dana Library brings that home. We have to continue to make our resources available to the community to a certain extent, but we also have an obligation to the students to make sure that we know who's there and that we can control the health and safety of our own community. I would say that on the spectrum of card swipe lockdown communities for universities, we are very far towards the minimal side of that compared to the maximal side. But I think we do have to look building by building about how we might improve that. So I think the first reaction with the Dana Library was to say, okay, at least we should be checking ID and having people sign in. And as to the doors that are manned, I'll let either Nancy or Todd speak to that. But in some cases, we have to accept some level of inconvenience to accomplish the goals that we're trying to accomplish. And it's always a balance between those things and trying to do what's best. So as I understand it, the campus here is doing security checks on all the major buildings with our internal and outside consultants, and they are advising us about the best way to respond to those multifactorial needs and to try to balance them with recommendations, and that's what they're going to be putting in place. But either one of you want to say that?
Sure. Yes, and in fact, in terms of the library, we are installing card swipes on both sides. So the doors will be open on both sides very soon. At the moment, we are keeping it on the one side, really to control flow. But there will be card swipes very soon on both sides. In terms of the assessment of building by building, we've been doing that actually for quite some time. The library assessment was done well before the incident in the library. And we're just, each one is very different. So the flow pattern of people coming in and out of buildings are different. The time use of buildings are different. And so we're really doing it building by building. And Todd, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Just a couple of things. Excuse me. We're concerned about actual risk of incidents, and so we've been mapping those and looking at places where we have actual risk. But students' feelings of safety are equally important, and they map closely, but not necessarily 100%. So we've also been mapping where people feel at risk, what are the conditions that lead people to feel like they're less safe, and we're trying to do interventions in both areas. One of the important things is that you don't want to do something that exacerbates perceptions of risk without dealing with risk. Like, you don't want to make people feel more afraid at the same time that you're not doing something about actual fear. Turns out that when we look at the data, incidents of criminal incidents on our space are quite small, and they've been declining over recent years. So we're making progress on the key indicators that we're looking for. But in each of these areas, and the library is a key example of that, we're trying to make sure we have the right procedures in place to be able to maximize both the sense of personal security, but also actual safety. And we've gotten a number of concerns raised about having a single door, so we're moving as rapidly as we can to get both doors open.
Yeah, the SGA has been involved in preliminary talks with the Chancellor's office when the incident happened, and then we're scheduling a meeting with RUPD, with the library, and the Chancellor's office, just so we could speak on what the students want, how they want it, what works best for the students overall. So I think overall we're moving towards that direction, but just moving there, we just needed to take some steps to make sure that everybody felt safe at the moment that anything happened. Is there a second question? Oh, and also on everybody's chair, there's a paper and a pen. You can keep the pen for yourselves. If you don't want to get up and ask a question for whatever reason, you can write it down. You can flag the ushers in the back, and they'll come grab the paper from you, and you can bring it up, and I'll read it for you. We have a question back there.
So my question really has to do with how this campus specifically is dealing with the 21st century educational needs of everyone on this campus. And I'm really specifically talking about like the building maintenance, about how like students don't have access to like 21st century technology needs like USBs near wherever you're sitting out on campus, or having basic infrastructure be met to certain standards. For example, if you go to Smith Hall and you go on the side, what's holding the staircase up is 2 wooden blocks, and it's falling apart, crumbling. And I'm wondering what your administration is really doing to address those problems.
Sure. Again, what I'll try to do is answer that at 2 levels, and when we get down to the real specifics about the campus here, I'm going to defer to Nancy and to Todd. But one of the things that we put in our strategic plan, that's a major part of the strategic plan, is improving the student experience in the educational domain. The facilities that we use are our ability to use technology in those facilities, the degree to which we use modern techniques like synchronous classrooms and flipped courses and things like that. And also, obviously, that has to be backed up by classrooms on campus that can support that technology. So we were able to attach significant funds from the state for our technology infrastructure. And I know that there's issues with spotty wireless, for example, on this campus, that now, as of the middle of January, we're in the program. We've done the planning, we've got the funds, we're in the actual implementation phase of rolling that wireless out, both in public spaces and in the dorms and things like that, so that we can move towards what will eventually be a seamless wireless with seamless handshakes and transfers between locations. That'll probably take 12 to 18 months to complete, but it's underway. And a lot of it is the planning and the funding and all that's all behind us now, so we're going. The second thing that I've asked all of our campuses to do is to start a rolling program of renovation of classroom spaces, so that every year, not just a year or two, but every year, we'll do a certain number of classrooms that will be identified by a committee of faculty and students, and we bring them up to the modern level of technology, not just rugs and chairs and sound treatment, but also the electronic IT that's at the podium and that's available to the instructor and to you. I believe here on this campus we have 30 classrooms scheduled for renovation this year, and then 30 in each of the following 2 years. And the plan is that that will be a steady state. So eventually we'll get to every classroom once every 5 to 7 years. Now, we've got a tremendous backlog of deferred maintenance. It just hasn't been done. And as I assess 26 million square feet of space that we have in Rutgers and State University writ large, the amount of deferred maintenance we have is massive. We're going to take this head on. We're going to put dollars into it every year in our budget so that you know a certain number of classrooms are going to be done. It'll take about 5 years to get to a new steady state, but you'll start seeing that next year. You'll start seeing it almost immediately. My feeling is, especially for a commuter campus like yours, where we have a lower number of residential students, we have to have the capacity for any of you who come here to hit a transportation hub that can be comfortable for you, can be a place where you're going to sit down and work, and a place that you can link in seamlessly to the educational environment. So it's very important that we have the kind of wireless infrastructure that will enable that education, and that your faculty have the environments in which they can teach that sort of thing. You know, we're looking more towards classes that can be taught across the entire system instead of just in one location. And I think the best example right now is with the law school here and in Camden, where we've set up our first two real immersion synchronous classrooms that we've had in Rutgers. And by this I don't mean IT enabled, I mean classrooms that are designed from the ground up to be semicircles of what then joins to be a single visual circle of students that all can interact with each other and with the instructor in both locations as if they were in the same place. A much more expensive thing to do, but it means that we can teach courses with an instructor in Newark to students who are in Newark and Camden as if they were in exactly the same classroom, and vice versa. So it expands the opportunities that are available to our students in each of our universities and locations, and it makes it much more efficient and effective. But we have to build the infrastructure. And unfortunately, we haven't been very good at doing that in the past 20 years. So there's a fair amount of work that comes along with that. And then the health and safety issues in our classrooms are something that I hope with the facilities master plan we've gotten on top of, that we've gone and inventoried every one of our buildings from the point of view of current condition and systems, fire safety systems, communication systems, all the other things that are in those buildings, so we can look across the university and see what's the magnitude of the problem, where we have to go first, how we're going to fund it. I'll give you an example of what I think our approach ought to be. I think we have way too many buildings. We have over 1,000 buildings, and way too many buildings that are outmoded and are not, they really can't be rehabbed. It's not cost effective to rehab them. So what we're looking to do is to consolidate into modern space and get rid of the other space. So just up on the New Brunswick Piscataway campus, as an example, we've just taken 12 buildings that house a lot of back office things in small buildings located all over, the entire campus for student services and things like that, putting them into a single building that has a bus stop in front of it, so it's a one-stop shop for our students. And then we're knocking the other ones down. All right, so I don't want to see anybody move back into those buildings. That defeats the purpose. So we're just knocking them down. And now we can focus on the ones that we need to upgrade. So it's a very conscious effort, but it's going to take some time to do.
So let me just say a few words in addition to what the President said, or really just along the same lines. First of all, let me urge you, if there are things like the condition in Smith Hall that you talked about, to let us know directly. So we have been doing this inventory. We do have a set of 30 classrooms and public spaces each year for the next 3 years that are going to be renovated, really state-of-the-art renovations. But if there are things like you pointed out in Smith Hall, we need to know. If we don't know already, we need to know exactly. Another real issue in Newark is really about accessibility, and we're really looking across the campus in terms of physical campus, in terms of what we do to make sure that especially high traffic areas are accessible, and that's really something that we need to do. The President mentioned the Wi-Fi installation. You probably know that in Military Park, between the Military Park Partnership and the city, there's now full Wi-Fi, really fast Wi-Fi. We have now made a deal with them to bring